one thing that you do not do on your daily podcast is talk about current events, because I think you try to make evergreen content, and obviously things will be out of date if you talk about contemporary events. Still, I know you're very educated and you follow this stuff a lot, and I was curious give you a chance to share some of your views on the several things that are happening in the world. And one of them is, of course, the war in Ukraine, the war that's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip, and as well as the 2024 presidential election in the United States. So let's go one by one through all of them. First, Ukraine. Any thoughts on where your crystal ball tells us where we're going and how that will end?
I don't think it's going to end in a Russian conquest of all of Ukraine. I think that military planners in the Pentagon and, in Brussels must have shit themselves when this war started, when they realized just how bad the Russian army was. Like, this is like I think, the Iraqi army probably would have put up a better fight than the Russians did. That they have been so uh, addled by corruption over decades that they weren't able to do basic things like provide food and ammunition. And you're constantly seeing these videos created by frontline soldiers in Russia, directed towards Putin, asking them for supplies, and they don't seem to care. And so, however this ends, Russia is going to have a problem when all of these frontline soldiers who have been treated like shit, um, they were abused, they were, not adequately provided what they needed to do their job. They go back home. I think it's going to cause a lot of resentment. It may start to cause problems. One of the things I've heard that's starting to happen, I don't know if it's a huge problem, but Russia never really had guns in the civilian population. And now soldiers are coming back with guns. So this could go a whole lot of different ways. And who knows what happens if Putin just up and dies one day? By all accounts, he's not well. What he has, nobody really knows, or how long he could last. It could be years, it could be months. Um, that being said, Russia has a great deal of mass, and so they're able to continue to just keep throwing bodies at Ukraine. I've often wondered why Ukraine has taken the strategy of fighting Russia's war. Russia is fighting an artillery war. They're entrenched, and like this big battle they had for Bakhmut, which is of no strategic significance whatsoever. They fought tooth and nail for this, which I thought was a dumb strategy. Where they saw success in the very early days of the war was when Russia was trying to make ground in an open area. I would have let the Russians come through and then just ambush them when they have no defensive positions, and then just continually do that, because that's where you have the lopsided battles that you saw very early in the war, where they can use javelins and stuff like that and just take out a lot of their armor. Um, I think it's very interesting what's happening with drones. This has been, I think that's the one thing coming out of this war that everyone is looking at, that the ability to make cheap drones. Uh, there are drone assembly plants in Ukraine right now where they're basically making drones for under $10,000 that have explosives and can go take out a tank that costs, a couple $1 million. So throughout the history of warfare, there's been this issue of asymmetry. There's whether defense or offense becomes predominant. And right now, I think you're seeing this trend where low cost drones have a potential to really change a lot of things. I think this is going to spread outside of Ukraine to other places. This may end up spreading. I could see this being used in wars in Africa. I don't think heavy armor and aircraft isn't as important in a lot of parts of the world where it's still just guys riding around in pickup trucks with AK-47s. Um, but it has huge potential, both for the U.S. military and others as well. As what's going on in the Gaza Strip, um, I think that what Hamas intended is pretty much what's happening. They wanted to do something so horrific that it forced Israel to counterattack, to go into Gaza, to take civilian casualties where they could then play the victim on the international stage. I think it was primarily done because they wanted to break up any possible peace talks between Israel and Saudi Arabia, especially. And I think the Saudis actually know that. If you've been listening to some of the things that they've said, they've been towing the Arab line and saying, oh, we're against this. But I think they're also very aware of what is happening and that the intent was to manipulate this. So I'm guessing that however this gets resolved, they will still come back to the table. And quite frankly, and even though this hasn't really been talked about, I think Gaza is and always has been, has the potential to be like a Dubai or a Singapore. It's perfectly located on the Mediterranean. The problem is they need someone who can manage it and provide investment money. I think a country like the UAE or Saudi Arabia, if they were to basically just take it over and manage it, could probably do a fantastic job and make it a very wealthy place. It would take 10, 20 years to do that, but given where they are right now and its location, I think it's something that's possible. But I don't know if that's in the cards anytime soon.